Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm making this recording, and today is the week of the 8th, the week of November the 8th, and let's head over to your class portal. We're in week 6, so let me just make a couple of announcements. Um, your midterm grades are posted, so you can go and check out your midterm grades, and your midterm grades reflect kind of like half of where you are. And most of you guys are doing a really good job. Just a few, maybe 2 or 3 of you are not turning in work, but for the most part, you guys are doing an awesome job. And so it reflects half of the grade, kind of like where you are now. And then the second half will begin from this week on down to, I want to say like I think we will finish December the 10th. I believe that's our last day. I will clarify that. All right. So anyway, we are in week 6. This is the week of November 8th. Can you believe it? This week we are in the Old Testament book of Numbers. Make sure once again that you are doing each week there's a discussion post. And these discussion posts are very much like your quizzes. They're like quizzes. So I'm looking to see that you are reading and learning. Your discussion forum this week comes from question 5 on page 160 of your book. And we're going to talk about women. One of the things that I want you to do is think about how women were portrayed in the Old Testament, but we're going to focus here in the book of Numbers. So what do the portraits of women in the book of Numbers suggest about the role of women in ancient Hebrew times? What I want you to do is to get a Bible, or you can go online to BibleGateway.net. You can read chapter 27 of the book of Numbers. Read Numbers chapter 27. Here's a really cool story about the daughters of Zelophehad. You're going to read this story in chapter 27. So if you read the entire chapter, this will help you. And after you read it, I want you to think about how those women, so there are 5 daughters and their father passed away, and they are going to Moses to request some land, okay? So I want you to think about how those women were portrayed, any type of lessons that you learned from these women. How do you think that women were seen during those ancient times, okay? All right, you're going to put that in your discussion post for week 6, but you got to read Numbers, the book of Numbers, and you're going to read chapter 27. All right, so we're going to go to our lesson today. We're in the book of Numbers. There's also a supplemental video that you can watch. So the book of Numbers is just that, numbers. A lot of folks, when they study the Old Testament, get bored or confused with it. And also, it's not really a book, a biblical book that you will hear a lot of preaching or teaching coming from it. Why? Because it's about numbers. The book of Numbers, we find it the 4th book in the Pentateuch. So I want you to jot this down. Remember, there are 5, the first 5 books are called the Pentateuch. And those are the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And those books are the foundation to the Jewish faith. The book of Numbers is a continuation of the story of the Israelite or the Hebrew people after they leave the location of Egypt. And so remember, if you go back to our last book, to last class, they're leaving out of Egypt. Why? Because of the harsh treatment that they were under the leader, Pharaoh. Numbers is going to follow these Hebrew people through their journey through the wilderness. And why would they call it Numbers? What a boring number, numbers. Well, it's simply that. It's like a census. It is a record book. It's about history as well. And it takes a look at the number of individuals that were present and counted during this time. So if you go to if you have a paper Bible with you, I want you to open it up to Numbers, the book of Numbers, and go to chapter 1. And I copied and pasted a couple of things here. Let's look at some of the numbers. Now, also, one of the cool things about the book of Numbers is it takes a look at who was there. This is just like so cool. So imagine if you were able to find some ancient book of your ancestors, right? And it showed how many of your ancestors lived in this particular town and or where they came from. That's the cool part, and you can figure out where these individuals originated from. In the first chapter of Numbers, we see some very important numbers. Here is the origination of the 12 tribes, these 12 tribes of Judah that come forth. And you're going to see so many references back to the word tribe. These are and on the left-hand side of my screen, you're going to see the name of the tribe, okay? And then you're also going to see the leader of the tribe. And these tribes, these are like chosen leaders of their community. They also become like ancestral people that we look back to, Jewish individuals may look back to as heads of the Israelite people. So you're going to see the tribe of Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Asher, Gad, and Naphtali. Okay. Who wrote the book of Numbers? Once again, we go back to Moses, but we're not certain that he was the real author. He may have had a hand in it. He may have written parts of it. He may have dictated some of the information to someone and they wrote it down. It's also thought that priests may have written some of the book as well. So we're not really sure about this book and who exactly wrote the book of Numbers. It's probably speculated that multiple individuals pulled information together. The book of Numbers, it said that went through a lot of different revisions at the hands of these different people and the hands of different priests, probably like around the 5th century as they started. These are like historical documents and they tried to get all of this information together. And a lot of biblical scholars believe that this book probably took its final form, or they probably like gathered all of the information together after the death of Moses. So that kind of leads us to say that Moses probably didn't write all of it. He couldn't have written all of it. And maybe he dictated some things or passed down some information to the people who are responsible for writing it. So in the book of Numbers, I do want you to take a look at the supplemental video that I have for you this week on the book of Numbers. What happens in the book of Numbers? So remember, the group of people that we follow closely in the Old Testament are the Israelite or Hebrew people. They formulate the Jewish culture or the Jewish faith. So the book of Numbers is covering them. And it said that it covers about 38 to about 40 years or so of their lifetime. And once again, this marks a very, very poignant time for the Israelite people. They're moving from place to place. Many times in the Old Testament, you remember we talked about geography. The reasons for moving could be numerous. Well, they're moving because they were not treated well. And God tells them to move to a promised land. And this group of people were known as like the first generation of Hebrew people after they left Egypt. And this first generation of people are really, really important. They hold it down. They hold the Jewish culture down for those to come. Now, here's the really interesting part. This group of folks, this group of Hebrew people wandered from about Mount Sinai area okay, to Kadesh. And I don't have a map right here, but it should not have taken them 38 years. It took them 38 years to get from point A to their point B. But there was a lot of contention, and it is documented in the book of Numbers. There's a lot of contention, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of arguments, there's a lot of lack of faith that happens with this group from time to time, and leadership. I'm going to say that as well. There's a lot that happens with their leadership during those 38 years. It should not have taken this group 38 years to move from point to point. It should have probably taken them a few months. Where do we find God in this text? How does God show up, the Creator show up in this text? So it's really interesting. Oh, let me say this too, in your book outlines, thank you for your book outlines. Some of you researched Old Testament books that didn't mention the name of God. I thought that was really cool. You guys did awesome jobs on your book outlines. In the book of Numbers, it shows that God is present with the Israelite people. They call God Yahweh, another name for God. But the book of Numbers shows that God was present with them when they were confused, when they were hungry, when they were looking for food, when they didn't know which way to go, when they were just really desperate. And the book of Numbers shows how God responded to them and shows that God is faithful and hung in there with them. Now, if you get a chance, I want you to thumb through your Bible, and I want you to thumb through the beginning. So here's a general outline of the book of Numbers. Remember, you thumb through it, you're going to see a bunch of numbers and a bunch of groups of people. But in about the 1st or 10th chapter, Israel, or the group of people named Israel, is at Mount Sinai. And this original generation of people called Israel, or called the Jewish people, they're given laws, they're given rules in order to follow. Now, these rules aren't meant to hurt them. These rules are meant to help them get through their journey. All right, now, in chapters 10 through 21, take your finger and thumb through that as well. Here's a transitional time, and we might call this the transitional generation. Now, remember, y'all, this group has been wandering for 38 years. So some of the people that started off on the journey did not make it to the end of the journey. They may have died off. And so as you read in that Daughters of Zelophehad chapter, you're going to see that their father died off. And then in chapters 22 through 36, towards the end of the book of Numbers, you see them move into a new generation. Once again, this new generation is given new laws. And the laws that the Creator God gives them is not to hurt them, but to help them. Women in the book of Numbers. So this is part of your discussion. You're going to read book of Numbers, go to 27, chapter 27, and I want you to read verses 1 through 11. If you get a chance, just read the entire chapter, but I want you to see how women are represented in the book of Numbers. So there are countless women that are mentioned by name. There's Miriam, there's also Moses' sister named Miriam, Moses' wife, and I'm forgetting her name, Zipporah is named, as well as the daughters of Zelophehad, okay? So it's real interesting also that some of the women in Old Testament times, as well as sometimes in New Testament, sometimes the writer, which was mostly male, did not always give them a name, or their name was daughter of so-and-so or wife of so-and-so. Okay, but also when you read the daughters of Zelophehad, their names are mentioned. And what were these daughters asking for? Okay, so as you read that story, I want you to find out what were the daughters asking for. And what they were asking for was unprecedented at that time, like nobody did that. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to figure it out in your reading. The book of Numbers emphasizes a lot of things for the Israelite people. It emphasizes that they must be holy, they must act a certain way, that God is holy. It emphasizes that human beings can do wrong things. They do stuff that we do. Um, God tells them to do something, and they're like, "Nah, I'm not. I don't think so." And humans sometimes get confused, and they are human. They're showing their humanity. The book of Numbers also emphasizes the necessity to obey God. And when they don't obey God, you see in this book, as well as a lot of other Old Testament and New Testament, that there is a repercussion when they don't obey. We see also God's faithfulness. The Creator is so faithful to every promise that the Creator gives to them and doesn't hold back on not one promise. We also see in the book of Numbers that the Creator God transforms this great nation of people, even though, they were being oppressed under an awful person, that was Pharaoh. It also shows that God stayed with them, hung in there with them, and then changed them into a great nation. And remember last week or week before, I believe, as we talked about Exodus, Exodus had a lot of connotation for African American people and those who were in slavery. That gave them a lot of comfort. And so the book of Numbers can also give that comfort to oppressed populations today. All right. So you're going to do this on your own. You're going to dig into this story. I want you to read Numbers chapter 20, verses 1 through 13. And I want you to read that passage a few times. I want you to check it out. And the trivia question is, describe Moses' attitude in that passage of scripture. Why does God say that Moses cannot go into the promised land with the rest of the Hebrew people? Why? That is your trivia question for this week. And I also want to give some shout outs to our students who are answering the trivia questions. Thank you to Tamika. Thank you, Lester, Dolores. Thank you, Ramona, who are answering the trivia questions. And you guys are doing great jobs of digging. All right. I hope that you are learning a lot. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and drop me a line, kberry@atlm.edu, or you can always send a message in D2L. All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you're having a blessed day.